Let's talk about Kenny Pickett and start off with him since you mentioned him. Out of Pittsburgh, 6'3", 217 pounds. He's 23 years old. He will be 24 in June. So
Yep.
a little bit of concern about his age. He did stay an extra year at Pitt to help develop, which I think was really good for him because if we're looking at this entire class, not just the four quarterbacks we're going to talk about, probably the most improved from start to finish. Also has some NFL blood, or he has football in his blood, sports in his blood. His dad was an All-American linebacker. His mom played soccer at the college level. And you can see that athleticism in his playing. And I don't think he necessarily gets as much credit as he should for his mobility.
Yeah, I think you're right. And this is a similar question when Joe Burrow was coming out. Just how athletic is he, right? And I think there were some people feeling that, some of us were overrating Burrow's athleticism. It's like when you see those great backyard athletes who can just create things, right? And they may not be blessed with incredible strength or speed or quickness, but when the ball is snapped, they're able to do things athletic wise, that make them different from other players. And I think that applies to Kenny. And he has a great sense of when to run, when to bail out of the pocket, when to extend plays and things like that. And, I would imagine that he's good at pickup hoops and he's good at dart throwing and he's good at it, just about any sport you give him. That's the kind of guy he seems to be. But absolutely, I think his legs were a big part of what he did, even if he didn't have monster rushing numbers or anything like that.
What was the first word or the first phrase that came to mind when you were introduced to his tape?
Yeah, it was probably 2 years ago. It's funny. We've been talking about Kenny Pickett forever. He's so old that Matt Rule 2 jobs ago recruited him to play at Temple, so, he's been going back a little ways here. I would say competitive has to be the word though. When he was a, 13 touchdown, 7 interception quarterback for like 3 years running, he willed them back against Penn State. Didn't win the game, but gave his team a chance to win as a sophomore. It was uglier. His mechanics weren't that great at the time, but you thought, this is a competitive kid. The next year, got the tar beat out of him against Clemson, kept peeling himself off the grass and playing more. And he's been injured a lot. He's played through a lot of pain. So, the injury quotient you have to factor in. But yeah, competitive. I think he's going to be a guy who's going to give his NFL opportunity every shot he gets.
He's got.
Yeah, he's going to do it, I think. So whether he's got the talent or not, that really is what comes down to that's the bottom line for his evaluation.
I see a lot of Kirk Cousins in his game.
Yep.
Is that the comp? And that's, by the way, I think it's a pretty popular comp, but it's definitely one that shows up regularly, and I think for good reason. Are you in agreement, or are you going in another direction?
Yeah, I mean, he's a little bit of a bigger kid, maybe a little bit more athletic, but very similar, I think. And I think it's going to be a similar type of career arc where he has some success, and he'll have a 4,000-yard season at some point, and he'll surprise people or what have you. But I think there'll always be this sense with Pickett that, can we do better? And it's almost like with Teddy Bridgewater, right? He's good enough to start 16 games for you, get you through the year. Maybe a more talented version of that, but I can't quite comp him to Burrow, but you can see similarities in their play style. So if you're used to watching Joe Burrow, you'll see some overlap. But I think the Cousins, the other thing that worries me, Liz, is that he had some bad decisions in the last couple minutes of games. The Miami game was a disaster, right? There were a few other. Virginia game, he almost coughed it up. So, it's like he plays composed up until a certain point when the wheels start coming off a little bit. Not every game, but it does happen. And that's why Cousins kind of popped into my head as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, I am wondering, though, if you're just sticking to the Joe Burrow comp because of the hands.
Well, yeah. I mean, look, the Burrow is like a whopping 9 inches, right? We're only talking about an 8 1/4 inch guy here. Yeah. I mean, it's worth mentioning. He wears a glove. It's the smallest hand that's been measured in a long time, right? He wears 2 gloves, Teddy 2 gloves style. Yeah. But the fumbles were a part of his story. This last year, it wasn't as bad, but up until this past season, he had a lot of balls that hit the ground.
Okay, so you mentioned Temple, right? Because he initially, coming out of high school in New Jersey, committed to Temple and then changed his mind and decided to go to Pitt. I mention this because Matt Rule and his relationship with Temple, and therefore his relationship with Pickett,
Yeah.
is now obviously in need of a quarterback since Sam Darnold wasn't the fix-it that they had hoped he would be. Mel Kiper, the great, has Pickett is mocking Pickett to the Steelers. You, however, have a different view of this.
I do. Yeah. And I mean, I could see both working. I mean, people ask, is Pickett going to be the quarterback that goes off the board first? I don't know that that's going to happen. I don't know that he's going to go in the top 10. I don't know that the Panthers love him. You get different opinions depending on who you talk to. And the Steelers have done a lot of work on him. Their facilities, right down the street.
Right.
They certainly know him, but remember Dan Marino. I mean, the Rooneys regret it to this day, but they didn't want to take the local kid. They ended up taking somebody else. So could that happen again? I suppose. I went with New Orleans. I was trying to find a place somewhere in the middle of the first round.
I thought you went with the Panthers. I thought your recent mock had the Panthers.
Oh, no. I think I put him there a couple weeks ago, but I don't even remember what my last mock is. I don't even know what today is, for that matter. But in the middle of draft season, it gets a little dark and a little strange. But yeah, no, I mean, I think my spot for him would be somewhere a little bit farther down the chain. I don't think he's going number 6. That's just my gut feeling at this point. Okay. But I mean, the Panthers still have a ton of cap space, and they have no draft picks in rounds 2 or 3. They would love to move down. I don't know if they can. I have a feeling they go offensive tackle, but it wouldn't shock me.
It's interesting. So I think a lot of people remember the Rule connection and the Temple connection, right?
Sure.
And think either the Panthers, or they love the hometown situation with Pittsburgh, the hometown kid, like you're mentioning. And obviously, I don't know if there'd be a quarterback battle, I suppose, with Trubisky in Pittsburgh now. But off of, completely away from those two options is New Orleans, which makes a lot of sense, especially for a grittier type of player. It seems to fit nicely with what a rebuild might look like. We need you to kind of bootstrap this whole team up. We're starting over.
Sure.
That all makes sense on brand too.